Annoy, machi, ensemble. Annoy, machi, ensemble. That's Creole, Haitian Creole. And in English, you would translate it, let's walk together. About 20 years ago, I sat for 2 days with a pastor in Haiti. He'd planted about 1.5 churches at that time. One in his hometown that he grew up in. And after 2 days, he looked at me and he said, Annoy, machi, ensemble. At the time, I didn't know I'd hear that again from one of my African pastors, but that phrase really came from Africa. You see, if you're walking a trail in Africa, there are a lot of dangers that you may not be aware of. And so it's wise not to walk alone. It's much more wise to walk with someone. And that's where that phrase comes from, and why it's in Haiti, because they are all brought to Haiti as slaves. It's smarter, better, safer to walk together. And so we began a walk with Pastor Luke and Pastor Mala in Haiti. And that phrase, let's walk together, has become a part of just the way I think and the way I talk. And I want to say to New Life, thank you for allowing us Annoy, Machi, Ensemble. It's been a wonderful walk. And my memories are really so full and rich that I sat this morning here weeping as I thought about how many of you were here when Trinity in town gave birth to New Life. And by the way, that's a nice phrase, Trinity giving birth to New Life. How many of you were part of that? Yes. And we walked together, didn't we? And you know, I remember Pastor Terry and Donna trusting me and the band, Renewal Band. By the way, Renewal Band is 28 years old. How many bands stick together for 28 years? We'll be ministering in Ohio next week together. And Doug Noonan, who's been the leader of that band, is no longer just Doug Noonan. He's Pastor Doug Noonan. And last Sunday, I was with him and many of the band members in the Ritz Theater. They rented the Ritz Theater because their sanctuary is too small. And they had 2 Sundays in a row where they introduced families to Jesus, gave their hearts to Jesus. So I bring greetings from Doug and all the Renewal Band people, and we're still going. Now I don't know that they have my microphone on anymore when I'm in the band. They kept having me move further back on stage, Zach. And I'm just not sure my mic's on anymore, and there's a reason for that. But I thought of when Pastor Terry and you invited us to come and do chapel down the road at NASCAR, and we set up our stage in the middle of all the beer trucks. There were beer trucks, names I'd never heard of, you know. That was pretty interesting. Yeah. And I don't know if you know it, but, you know, God's really, really good at what he does. We think the devil's good at what he does, and he is. But God is better. of course. They put in new bleachers at the racetrack that year, but the tickets hadn't been sold for those new bleachers. So people by the thousands were lined up to get those new tickets. And that line went right at the back of the area where we had chapel. And so people stood in line and paid $40 to hear Renewal Band sing. It was just great. I think that's the only time anybody's paid $40 to hear us sing. Tony Campolo, your pastor, was part of bringing Tony Campolo here. And the Renewal Band, we did the music. How fun was that at the high school auditorium? Man, that was great. And in giving birth to New Life, you're coming up on 20 years. What's the date for the 20-year anniversary? 25th. The 25th of this month. Of May. And I remember when New Life met in a truck garage, a diesel smell. You preached to diesel smell. It was great. But people found Jesus there. And New Life grew there. And I think it may have been there or at the daycare center with the long sidewalk. We had to do this long sidewalk to get back to it. And on that long, skinny sidewalk, you had to take all the chairs, sound equipment, you know. Do you know it's hard work planting a new church? And those of you who raise your hand, you know that. Do you realize, now we're church planters and plant churches around the world. Do you know that this morning, or already this morning and on into the day, the majority of church plants, they're worshiping God sitting on white plastic stackable chairs that have to be put up and taken down. And you know, some of you folks here, you invented this cart that would carry all that sound equipment and chairs and all that, and you had a trailer, you'd roll it in there. It was awesome, you guys. It's just great, you know. I remember when Pastor Terry's office was in the little strip mall over here. You know, I'd visit him there. I remember the first time I ever came to New Life, you were meeting in some little park somewhere, you know. And then down at the school building down there, man, it was, giving birth is painful, isn't it? Labor pains. A lot of hard work, huh, ladies? Giving birth, yeah. But I tell you what, think of, you know, when I sat here today, I'm thinking of faces I don't see who are in heaven. Precious people who helped bring this all to pass. And now the baton's been handed to you. What are the next 20 years? What's God's blueprint for the next 20 years? Who is it that He has planned that would walk to the front here and say, I want to serve Jesus? Isn't that awesome? He's got plans. And if we do it right, those plans will be more and take more skill and more abilities than what we have. We just plain have to have Jesus, or we won't get it done. Wow. And I had to write all this down because I usually don't say all this stuff. About 20 years ago, you started supporting me every month. Think about that. You've given me over $100 every month for 20 years. Put that in your little calculator. And now you bless us with $4,000 for one of our churches, the Haiti people. Pray for this pastor. His name is Mullah. He came out of a voodoo home. A year and a half ago, We brought his 27-year-old son to the States because he needed a liver transplant. We got him here, we found a liver, but he was too sick that day to receive it, and he passed away. A few weeks ago, Mala's wife, who was still grieving, and in the voodoo culture, she'd get text every day, Terry, that said the reason her son died was they didn't honor the spirits. Evil is evil. But she wasn't feeling well. She'd taken her 19-year-old son into town to take his English test. She wasn't feeling well. Pastor Mala says, "You stay home, Elda, for Sunday services." And after Sunday services, he went home and sat down on the bed, and they were talking. He thought she went to sleep. Well, she went to sleep Jesus style. And that didn't stop the 200 kids that come to school and need a meal every school day. That didn't stop the fact that there was 37 orphans out there who, again, lost a mother. That's the kind of challenges we face. Pastor Mala baptized, I don't know how many, Easter Sunday, but and they sent me the orphans sent me the sweetest Easter greeting. I haven't even responded to them yet. But there's folks around the world who need your prayers. Remember Pastor Mala lost his son, now he lost his wife. And when I called him the day after he lost his wife, he said, "She's gone. She's gone." They're very hands-on. I don't know any pastors and wives like that, do you? Just think about what it'd be like when hands-on leaders, and one of them's gone, and an orphanage, and a school, and 7 churches is what they have. Pray for them. Anoy Mati Ansam, thanks for walking with us. Thanks for praying for us. And thanks for praying for my family. Last Sunday was the first Easter in a long time. All 4 of my children worshiped the Lord Jesus in church. And we have 3 that are very faithful and involved in ministry. And then our youngest son, who we've shared with you, has had some challenges. He's doing good. And he has 13 months of sobriety. Praise God. Amen. Those of you who are serious Christ followers, that's most of you, right? Have you ever had anybody say to you, about you, talking about you? They say, "Well, Zach, he's got religion now." Have you ever had anybody say to you, "Heard you got religion"? Or they'll say, she's religious. Yeah. How does that make you feel when they say that? You feel like you got religion? What is it that you want them to know about you and that whole subject? When they say you got religion, what do you want to say to them? I've got no. And what is that? I've got what?
Relationship.
There you go. We want people to know it's not religion. It's a relationship that we have. Now, wherever I go, I have people say, either this is Mr. Wright, or they'll say Pastor Wright. Those are people that don't know me very well, or they're just being respectful. That's not what my closest friends. Did you call me Mr. Wright yesterday?
No, sir.
Did you call me Pastor Wright?
No, sir.
What'd you call me?
Gary.
Gary. You know, I'm around folks who believe in God. Some say he's my higher power. And that's about as narrow as it gets. Higher power. Some say, I had a guy who was out of the higher power movement, and I'm not really putting that down. It's a place to start. But he came out of that movement of recovery that wants to keep it just your higher power. But he went so far as he said, but I believe in God. He had a deep, bassy voice, you know. And he'd look at me and he'd say, God. And I'd say, Jerry, it's God. But I really want you to know him as Jesus. Jesus is, well, and the angel said, his name shall be Jesus. Do you know him on a first name basis this morning? Is that the way you talk to him? Is it personal? Or is it God? Is it personal? Is it Jesus? I hope today it's Jesus. And I'm hoping today you have a relationship with Jesus. Have you ever been someone who sat down with someone, or you went to someone and you knew you were going to tell them something they really had been wanting to hear? Sure you have. You know, have you ever said to someone maybe many years ago, I'm going to get married? Or because of what I heard this morning about the new room, we're going to have a baby. Those are considered good news announcements, right? Most of the time, yeah. Have you ever been the bearer of bad news? We pastors have to do that. 3 years ago, I was preaching in Michigan. I'd gone there to thank the church for participating in our birthday party for Jesus ministry. They had given so many bundles of hope for children in Haiti, Mexico, and Brazil. And I went there to thank them. And now the pastor is United Methodist churches. Methodists sometimes bunch them up. You know, I have one pastor for several churches. And this was my roommate in college. We traveled together after the Asbury revival broke out. He and I were just dear, dear friends, still are. And I went there to thank them, like I'm thanking you. Stayed in the parsonage. And he went off to the first service ahead of me. And as I was walking through the living room, I heard his wife on the phone. As I heard her conversation, I knew I wasn't there to talk about birthday party for Jesus. After his wife got off the phone, I said, hon, I'll go tell him. And I went and found my roommate from college, and I had to tell him, last night, your only son was in an automobile accident, and he didn't make it. Now that's part of our history when we see each other. He said to me many times, I'm so glad you were here to be the one to tell me. I don't know that I feel that way. That was awful. That was awful. To be the bearer of bad news. And now today, we don't have good news, bad news, and we got fake news. And I don't even know what that is. Do you? I don't even know. But I'm here today to ask you, are you a runner or are you a watcher? Are you a runner or a watcher? Or maybe you're just a spectator. Jesus went to his hometown. I suppose you've all had the experience of going to your hometown. Maybe you live in your hometown. My hometown is 7 miles away from where I live. Jesus went to his hometown. And in Luke chapter 4, verse 16, it says, he went to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and on the Sabbath day, he went into the synagogue as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unrolling it, he found the place where it was written. This is what Jesus read. The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, recovery of sight for the blind, and to set oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. This next part's really cool. Then he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of everyone in the synagogue were fastened on him. Now, I don't know if you know this, some Jewish scholars say he went and sat in the Moses chair. Actually, it was an empty chair. They kept it empty. No one sat in it because it was the chair that the Messiah would sit in when he came. Some say that Jesus didn't go sit down where he'd been sitting, but he went and sat in the Messiah chair, and he said, today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. Oh my, what a stir that caused. And he was really quoting Isaiah, and in Isaiah 52, this is really part of what he was sharing. Everyone, the Apostle Paul was referring to Isaiah 52 when he said, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord Jesus will be saved. How then can they call on the one they have not believed in? How can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can they preach unless they are sent? And it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring what kind of news? Good news. The Isaiah passage actually reads this way. How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those who bring good news, who proclaim peace, who bring good tidings, who proclaim salvation to Zion. Your God reigns. Listen, your watchmen, lift up your voices. Together they shout for joy when the Lord returns to Zion. The word for good news in those passages is euangelium. 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 It's an interesting word. You break it down, you can see in the last part of that word, the word angel. messenger. And the EU means good. So it means good news. But I want to share with you the story of this word. Jesus often took words that were not used very often, and I guess we would say he repurposed them. He did that with agapio, seldom used word, and yet it so describes his love for us that is, as we sang this morning, unfailing. Evangelion is that kind of word. It was a military word, just used for the military. When a village had its soldiers, its men, go off to war, the village immediately went into a very tense state. Why? Because no matter who their soldiers, the men from their village, were fighting, what army they were with, they knew this. In that day, to the winner went the spoils. And what was the spoils? If you were an old person like me in that village, and your soldiers lost, you were the spoils. And what would your end be for the elderly? Can you guess? They'd just all be killed. If you were a woman in that village, what would your future be as being part of the spoils? You would be raped, and you'd be a slave. What if you were children in that village? What did you have to look forward to? Slavery the rest of your life. And so, the village was tense, wondering what the outcome of the battle would be. And this is what they did. Zach, they would choose people who had good hearing, like you, and good eyes, and they would place them at the edge of the village. They called them watchmen, even though most of the time the only one left in the village who had good eyesight and ears were watchwomen. Watch is not a verb. It's a noun there. And they would be listening and looking and waiting. Because from the battle, there would be some kind of good news or bad news. Hopefully not fake news, whatever that is. Do you know how it would be communicated? They would send a runner. It's where we get the marathon. A runner from the battle going back. And there would be the watchman on the walls. They could often tell what the news was by the way the runner ran. They were looking and watching. And if it was bad news, if they'd lost, they would try to yell as soon as possible, "Run for your life! Go hide! Run!" But there was one word they all longed to hear. What was the word? Evangelion. Evangelion! Good news! We won! Jesus chose that word that we now translate gospel. The good news. That's the word Jesus chose. When he started his ministry, he sat down and he quoted Isaiah. In Hebrew, it was a little different sound, but the word he used was evangelion. Good news. I have been anointed. I have been called. The reason I'm here is good news. And he described what that would mean. He said, I'm going to heal the brokenhearted. Is there anybody here today who has a broken heart? I thought so. Run to Jesus, and you'll find he's already started. He's running to you. Now, I left out something that's really important. The runner from the battle often had to run for days. They didn't have Nike or New Balance shoes on. They had leather sandals. And by the time they could reach the village to cry out, Evangelion! Their feet would be swollen, blistered, and bloodied. But when the message was Evangelion, beautiful, beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. Here's the good news. He heals the brokenhearted. Why? Because he is the runner from heaven to you and to me and to this church and to this world. He is the runner from heaven with bloody feet, bloody hands, bloody brow, and a bloody side. He's the runner from heaven to you and to me. And he wants to heal the brokenhearted. He's already got a head start running to you, broken heart. If you run to him. He said, I came to give liberty to the captives. Is there anyone here today who feels trapped? It's a terrible feeling. It leads to depression. Depression is when you enter an endless cycle feeling like you can't get out of the situation you're in and you don't know what to do. Depression, we have a movement of depression across this land. People feeling trapped for a lot of different reasons. He came to bring liberty. You know, there's some of us who have 20/20 eyesight, but we're blind as can be. He said, I came to give sight to the blind. And he said, I came to set free the oppressed. When you open that word up, and what did it mean? It meant those who were bruised, who crushed, feeling trapped, oppressed. And he said, I came to start this year now. How beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. So I asked you earlier this question. Are you a runner or are you a watcher? Or are you a spectator? I feel like God called me today. Yeah, he called me and anointed me today to say to New Life, I've called you to be runners with bloody feet. And some of you I've gifted to be hearers. You hear things other people don't hear. You hear him. Jay, where you at? See, thanks for listening and being a hearer, a watchman. for our oppressed people in Haiti. You know, one of the first things I did when I got to Haiti and had all these pastors in the room, I called some of them up and I got down on my knees and I kissed their feet. And I said, I'm sorry that people of my race did to you, your race, what they've done. I remember when I got down on my knees, they were grabbing me. They didn't want me to do it. And then Pastor Luke said, no, you let him do that. We human beings are capable of horrible things, are we not? But when we've met the runner who had beautiful feet, he can transform us so that we can be that one who is a runner with bloody feet, or one who is a watchman like Jay, hearing and looking for God, looking for him, looking for the runner. You think of the job the watchman or the watchwomen had? They had to go back and calm people in the village and say, we know they're coming, we just haven't seen them yet. They'll be coming. They were ministering to the village. They were representing the village with their eyes and ears. There are people here this morning. God has called you to have ears and eyes for new life. He wants these chairs filled with people whose hearts are broken, who are in captivity, who are oppressed. He wants them filled. And you are the runners, and you are the watchmen. If you're to go get them, I guarantee you, you'll have bloody feet, and you'll have blisters. But you'll be able to carry you, Angelian. You, Angelian. He won. He won. The battle's over. But you just have to accept it. How many wars has there been where decades later a warrior was discovered in the mountains or someplace in the rainforest who didn't know the war was over? And they'd spent much of their life thinking the war was still on. How many people in the Martinsville Ridgeway area don't know? Evangelion. He won. He won. He's looking for watchmen and watchwomen and people who will take the baton and say, I'll take that. Your feet are bloody. You've done enough. I'll take it. I'll be that runner for God. I'll take the message. I'm 66. Obviously, my body doesn't work like it used to. You know what's in here? You know what that is? That little white thing? See that? That's my baggage claim ticket for my walker. Because I have been called to be a runner. Can't run anymore, so I'm a roller and a walker. I have a wonderful front porch. I have a wonderful white wicker chair with a nice soft blue cushion on my front porch. I love my front porch. I just can't afford to sit there because I've been called to be a runner. Now, I don't want you to put me on a pedestal because I'm also an idiot at times. And I don't always do the right thing. But I have been called to be a runner. And some of you have been called to be a runner. And this morning I'm here to ask you to be a part of the next 20 years, either a runner or a watchman or a watchwoman. To commit yourself, and you say, man, I'm tired. People that really know me sometimes, that I know I can tell them the truth, they say, how you doing, Gary? Because I'm in a walker, and can't walk very well. I go, how you doing? And I say, I'm tired. They say, you going to retire? My retirement plan is to go to heaven. That's my retirement plan. Am I working because I need the money? No. No. No, I'm not. That's not why I do it. I've been called. I've been anointed. The best thing that can happen when I talk to people, whether it's one-on-one or like this, is that they feel the presence of Jesus. Do you feel Jesus today? You can't be in his presence and go away the same. You can't. He's desperate. I hate to say that about God, but he's desperate to have runners and watchers in America. North America. As I cross this land, and I've been pretty well coast to coast in just the last few weeks. America's hungry for revival. Hungry for God. They don't know whether he's a higher power or God. They don't know. Somebody needs to tell them it's Jesus, sweet Jesus, wonderful Jesus. And the best way you can do that is to have Jesus so much in your life that when they come around you, they feel him. And they go, ooh, what's that? I used to say this when I was a teenager. I'm still saying it at 66. When I wake up in the morning and I open my eyes, now it's really slowly, I want the devil to go, uh-oh, he's awake. What's he going to do today? And when I walk down the street and I pass somebody, I just want to have Jesus so much in me that it kind of reaches out there and loves on them a little bit. And they go, ooh, what was that? I'm thrilled when I get to be with somebody and I give them a hug and they go, ooh, I feel him. Huh. I led a young man to the Lord one night, but before I led him to the Lord, he looked at me and said the sweetest words I could hear. He said, "I never met anybody like you." He said, "But whatever you got, I want it." That's the way I want to live. I want to have bloody feet, blisters. Beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. Would you recommit yourself to Jesus today to be a runner or watcher? And that you would dedicate yourself to do that within the circle of faith called New Life Community Church. Would you do that? Zach and the band, you can hit the instruments up here if you want. And I'm going to ask Pastor Terry and Donna to come. Would you come?